since our reasoning takes place with words, and the words don't accurately represent the things, that leads us into all kinds of logical confusion. Since it is not possible to adduce things by themselves in discourse, in speech, but we use names as symbols instead of the things themselves. And we use names to refer to ideas which are themselves symbols of things outside the mind. We think that what happens in names also happens in things, just as those are deceived who are unskilled in calculations. And he makes another comparison here. He says, this error in thinking and reasoning also happens, we can also see examples of it in mathematical calculations. And he gives us an illustration here. He says, there is not, however, a resemblance. Names and the multitude of sentences are finite or limited in number, but things, actual objects, are infinite in number. It is necessary, therefore, that the same sentence and one name should signify many things. Hence, as there are those who are not skillful in calculations, in mathematical calculations, they are deceived by the scientific. They're deceived by those who are skilled in those calculations. After the same manner, in arguments, are deceived. Let me read that sentence again. There are those who are not skillful in calculations who are deceived by the scientific, those who are skillful. After the same manner, in arguments, those who are unskilled in the power of names are deceived by paralogisms, both when they dispute themselves and when they hear others dispute. So the first cause of their errors is their lack of scientific knowledge of the science and art of the names of things, which we studied back in the categories. Through this cause, therefore, and other reasons which will be assigned, there may be a syllogism and an elenchus in appearance. And remember, anytime he uses the word appearance or in appearance, it's a negative. It means it appears to be true, but is actually not true. There may be a syllogism and an elenchus in appearance, when they are not so in reality. Since, however, it is more the endeavor of some to seem to be wise, rather than to be wise, and not seem to be wise. For sophistic is apparent wisdom. Here he explains what this term sophist or sophistic means. Sophistic is apparent wisdom. A person appears to be wise. It's fake intelligence, fake science, fake understanding. Sophistic is apparent wisdom, not being wise in reality. And a sophist is a person who endeavors to acquire wealth from apparent and not real wisdom. This is an interesting point, and I'd like to comment on it a little bit. I didn't read that one sentence very clearly, and I'd like to clean it up. He says, it is more the endeavor of some to seem to be wise. That is, many people, they're really not interested in wisdom. They're interested in gaining some appearance of wisdom. This is what they're actually seeking. They're seeking an appearance of wisdom. And the motive of this, like, who would do that? Who would not want to actually possess wisdom, but just appear to be wise, like be a fake wise man? Who would want to do that? The answer is a sophist, he says, is one who, and here's the motive, who endeavors to acquire wealth from apparent and not real wisdom. So when a man desires to make money, he's not interested in the labor and toil of true wisdom seeking, of true philosophy, because that's not necessarily going to help him to get the money that he wants, the kind of money he wants, the kind of wealth he wants. The kind of wealth he wants doesn't require real wisdom. It just requires an appearance of, just enough of an appearance of wisdom to dupe people who he can make money from. And therefore he's looking for an apparent or an appearance of wisdom. It's his endeavor to seem to be wise, rather than to be and not seem to be wise. He's not interested in true wisdom. He's just interested in an appearance of wisdom so that he can use that appearance of wisdom to make some money. And this is normal today. Think about it. How many people seek a college degree or a high school diploma not because they desire to actually master the high school study program, not because they actually desire to master the college degree program, but because they simply want a piece of paper that they can then use to pretend to be wise. For what purpose? To get a job, to make money, and so on. That's what motivates this sophistical learning, fake learning, to appear rather than to be wise. And we see that money making is the source of evil of this false learning. It is necessary, he says, that that they should appear to perform the work of wisdom rather than to actually perform it, and not merely appear to do so. But the business of him who is skillful in anything, the business of him who is skillful in anything, who is truly skillful, truly wise, is not to be deceived himself in things which he knows, and to be able to detect another person who deceives. So what should your true motive be in study? Here Aristotle tells us what our true motive of study should be. First of all, not to be deceived in the things which we know. In other words, not to make errors in our own thinking that cause us to be influenced by our own false ideas. That's obviously pretty serious. If we're going to start a business, an honest, good business, our ideas have to be true. Our business plan has to be true. If I'm going to pursue some knowledge, let's say of gardening or agriculture, that knowledge needs to be true. If I'm deceived, if I have errors in my thinking because of logical mistakes, then I'm going to do things that are unproductive or unsuccessful or unprofitable. And the cause of those errors is going to be the errors in my thinking. The same is true of my health. If I have wrong ideas about nutrition or exercise or what constitutes a healthy life, my errors can actually lead me to become unhealthy. And so it's very important then for me to make sure that I'm not deceived in my own thoughts, that there are not errors in my own thoughts. And spiritually, this is also very important because I need to constantly resist temptations that come from the devil that are Sophistical Elenchi. St. Ignatius of Loyola taught in his spiritual exercises that the devil is a sophist. And the devil actually uses these apparent syllogisms to confuse and deceive us and lead us away from God into sin. And the reason why we should be afraid of sin is not even that we should fear that God is going to artificially and directly punish us for our sins, which he could, but often doesn't, but that our sins and errors will actually lead us into problems because they're false. And so we want to protect ourselves. We want to protect our own minds from our own ideas and reasoning so that we're not deceived in our own thoughts. And also, he says, the second motive for seeking wisdom is to be able to detect another person who deceives. So to avoid being self-deceived and to detect a person who is deceiving us. Those are the two true motives for the knowledge of this wisdom, that we may avoid self-deception in our own thinking. And this happens all the time. And also so that we can identify one who seeks to deceive us. That's the true motivation of study. But there are others, as Aristotle says, who seek these studies not because they're interested in these true motives, but because they are the ones either seeking to deceive or only concerned with some inferior end like making money. And they're just looking for whatever it takes for them to be able to get it. Usually an appearance of wisdom. A piece of paper from a school, a certain look, the use of certain terms or words. And you'll learn to identify these people by their ignorance of the true sciences and arts of philosophy. They never study the real sciences. They never do the real work of wisdom seeking. They're just trying to appear to be something that they're actually not for the sake of some end of their own. So this is a very, very helpful opening chapter. He goes on to say, of these people, one consists in being able to give a reason, and the other in the ability of receiving a reason. It is necessary, therefore, that those who wish to argue sophistically, those who wish to intentionally argue sophistically, that is, to deceive others, should investigate the genus of the before-mentioned arguments, since it is to the purpose. For a power of this kind will cause a man to appear wise, which with these is the object of deliberate choice. That there is therefore a certain genus, a certain class of arguments of this kind, sophistical arguments, false arguments that are deceiving because they appear to be true. There is a class of arguments called sophistical. There is a genus of arguments of this kind, and that those whom we call sophists aspire after such a power is evident. And so here we have the end of chapter 1 of book 1 of Aristotle's Sophistical Elenchi, and we see the importance, obviously, the importance of this study. I think it's an exciting study to get into, because if your motive is pure, if you have a true motive, I get into this study and I say, I'm excited to think that I may possess these two ends, namely, I may free myself from errors in my own reasoning or in my own production of arguments, but also that I may protect myself from others who try to deceive me for some purpose. Those are the motives of this study, and if you have a pure heart and a sincere desire for wisdom, they have to excite you about this study. Again, as I said, in modern schools, we often find people trying to appear to be wise men. And what they do is they introduce ideas. And this is especially true in modern natural sciences, where people pretend to be scientists, where they're actually only using an appearance of some kind of scientific knowledge to promote their own ideas and make others think that there is proof for them. That's something that a sophist would do. Or people who seek to know certain subjects only so that they can become quote unquote teachers of them and get a job and have a paycheck, but they're not really interested in those subjects. For example, how many people are writing teachers in schools who themselves aren't professional writers, who don't write anything? It's just an appearance of skillfulness for the sake of money making. And then in the modern classical education movement, we find, as I said, people trying to bring in a shallow and oversimplified study of quote-unquote logical fallacies to make themselves appear clever and appear reasonable and concerned with the truth when they don't present the actual science. They don't study the actual art of reasoning, which is far more complex and will only be pursued by those who desire the real thing, because it's too costly of an investment of time and energy for anyone to do it who hopes to turn a financial profit at the end. The time and the energy, if you think that your time is worth a certain amount of money, if you wanted to make money, it would be far more profitable for you to go get a job at Walmart than to study the art of reasoning, because it's going to take thousands and thousands of hours of diligent study to learn this art and science. And for what? No money in the end. It's certainly not a good plan if you're hoping to make money. The Classical Liberal Arts Academy makes our courses available for free because these studies are not for the sake of money, nor should students seek them for money. And it's a terrible investment of time and energy if you're hoping in the end to convert that knowledge into money. There are many better ways to make money. And that's why a wise man would never seek to make money through philosophy. When we look at St. Paul, when St. Paul needed money, he didn't start teaching to make money or studying to make money. He sold tents. He made tents and sold things because that's a good way to make money. There are ways to make money, but philosophy and teaching are not the right way to make money. The motive in true study and true teaching is to be wise, to be truly wise, to avoid self-deception, and to be able to detect deceivers or sophists. So Aristotle explains this for us in this opening chapter. And just to get back to the original question, when we said the topic of this study was Sophistical Elenchi, and we want to ask, what are Sophistical Elenchi? We don't want to create an artificial definition so that we can appear wise and pretend to know something that we actually don't. But we've gathered a little bit of information so far. We've seen that an elenchus is a kind of syllogism. We saw that it has a contradiction of the conclusion in it, and based on our reading here alone, we don't necessarily know what that means. This is not the place to learn that. We can talk about that in another place, and we will if you study the art of reasoning. He'll explain that a little more in the coming chapters. We learned a little bit about the Sophistical Elenchi, what an elenchus is, and as for sophistical, he explained that in that parenthesis, sophistic means apparent wisdom, not being so in reality. That's what it means to be sophistic or sophistical. And a sophist is one who endeavors to acquire wealth. That's his actual interest. And the way that he does so is by duping people with apparent and not real wisdom. So a very easy way, something you should always watch for, a way to identify a deceiver. And this does not mean that everyone who seeks money is a deceiver. That's not true. But you will always find that the deceivers are motivated by some financial gain. And financial gain can be complicated because there's a process by which financial gain is sought. Wise, or I should say skillful modern marketers understand this. You don't just walk up to a person and say, hey, you want to buy this? Give me some money. Business is not that simple and straightforward. Marketing understands that there's a grooming process, or what's called lead nurturing, which leads a person who's called a lead, a person who might be interested in buying something, who leads them step by step to the sale, to the money making. And so someone may have money making as their goal, but in their communication with you don't appear to be interested in money making. And they use an apparent wisdom to gain their first objective, which is trust. Trust is the first objective. They want you to trust them. And once they gain your trust, they can then tell you what you should do. You should buy this, or you should do this. Because in the long term, they have a scheme to make money. And the means by which they make that money is through an apparent rather than a true wisdom. And so watching, people say follow the money, watching for someone who is motivated by money making and thinking about how what he's saying or what he's teaching or what he's doing may simply be done for the sake of some sale at the end. And this is the problem with this modern classical education movement. It's not the real thing. It's been created just to make money. The same is true of many different kinds of education. Modern college education is a system that exists not to impart true wisdom to students, but simply to make money. The students are there hoping to make money. The professors are there to make money. Everyone knows it's not a good system in terms of living a wise life, but they all agree to participate in it anyway because they hope that through it they'll be able to make some money. So watch for money making, because money making is the motive of sophists in the world. The only other thing I'd like to remind you of before we wrap up here is that saying by St. Ignatius that the devil is a sophist. And these deceptions will not only come from men or from the world or through the world, but they'll come through the devil's influence in our own thoughts, in our own reasons, in our anxious thoughts, in our sinful thoughts. We'll very often find ourselves thinking of reasons why we should sin. And those reasons are sophisms. Those reasons, those temptations, if we become skillful in these things, we'll be able to begin seeing through those temptations and understanding that the devil truly is a person using this genus of syllogisms to deceive us just as a sophist would in the world. And so this becomes very helpful for us spiritually. So I look forward to going through this study with you, not just making these videos, because this isn't much of a collaboration or companionship. It's just me speaking on camera. But as you begin to work through the assignments, submit your writing, ask questions, and we can start to discuss the study back and forth, I look forward to that companionship and working with you. And I encourage you to get started now. Read through this lesson on your own. I hope that this video is a helpful walk through the reading. I think if you try to read the lesson on your own first, without my commentary, you'll find that it's much more difficult than watching the video and then going and making the reading. So I trust that this is helpful. But as you get started, I look forward to seeing your responses to the comprehension questions, and encourage you, if you have any questions, to contact me. Post on the forum. I recommend you post on the forums, because then it allows other students to see the questions, and when I answer a question, I can invest a little more time and energy in answering it, because I know that in answering this one question publicly, it may answer it for 20 different people. So please post questions on the forums and give me the chance to answer them there. But if there's a private question you'd like to ask, like maybe how this applies to something in your life, and you'd like to discuss that privately, not appropriate for a forum, please go ahead and contact me privately. My email address is mail@classicalliberalarts.com. So I hope that's a helpful walkthrough. It's time for you to study this lesson for mastery, complete the lesson assessments, and we'll move on in the study of the last book of Aristotle's Organon on the Sophistical Elenchi. God bless your studies.